Most recently, the release of the long-awaited game Cyberpunk 2077, which made a huge impression on the gaming industry. But we do not even think about how big the cost of creating such a game can be, because companies spend money not only on creating the game itself, developing the plot, voice acting and graphics, but also on promoting this game so that it will pay off in the future. You will know the budget of this and 9 other games after watching this video. From the last place, I was shocked. Stay tuned for that. Number 10, Red Dead Redemption $100 million. I'm sure many people will wonder why the article doesn't include Red Dead Redemption 2. The answer is simple: Rockstar has not yet officially announced how much money was spent on Red Dead Redemption 2, so we have to settle for the figures of the first part. At one time, $100 million was just a cosmic sum for the game, but the money spent was worth it. Immediately after its release, the game was very warmly received by both players and critics. The developers were able to make the best game about the Wild West and earn hundreds of millions on it to create subsequent projects. If we talk about RDR2, then its budget is equated with GTA 5, but all this is just a rumor. Number 9, Max Payne 3 $105 million. Rockstar Studio, apparently, took this name precisely because the founders really like to behave like real rock stars and throw money right and left. Taking the Max Payne series under their wing, they decided to turn Part 3 upside down and do something unusual. Of course, during the passage of Max Payne 3, echoes of the early parts of GTA were heard, but it cannot be said that this did not benefit the project. The updated Max cost Rockstar $105 million evergreen bucks. Although he did not manage to become such a big hit as GTA or RDR, he still brought the company good money, and once again proved that they can make a quality literally any game. Number 8, Halo 2 $120 million. The first part of Halo became a real hit on the Xbox console from Microsoft, and the continuation was decided to do even more on a large scale. At the same time, Bungie Studios invested the most money in advertising, which eventually resulted in $80 million for marketing alone. At the same time, the development itself was 2 times cheaper. Promotion with such a budget turned out to be very successful, and Halo 2 is still considered the most successful game in the series. The studio showed that you can make masterpieces even with reasonable budgets, and to attract as many players as possible, it is enough to release a really high-quality game and competently make an advertising campaign. Number 7, Shadow of the Tomb Raider $135 million. The third part of the updated adventures of Lara Croft cost developers much more than the rest. The creators decided to beautifully complete the story of the Tomb Raider and pour as much money into it as possible. Only the development took $100 million, and all the rest of the money was spent on advertising. As a result, the end turned out to be very successful, as well as the whole series. Even though this is a completely new vision for Lara, and the series is more focused on action than solving puzzles, it is still worth your attention. Moreover, the creators worked hard on the final part and did not spare a single cent. Number 6, Star Wars: The Old Republic $210 million. The idea to make a game based on the Star Wars universe initially looked very interesting. No one has ever tried to do something like this before, and all this time the exciting space saga literally required bold experiments. And so, BioWare decided to try and spent more than $200 million on its project. About 800 people worked on the game for 6 years. During all this time, we had to spend more than $200 million on development, along with a fairly modest advertising campaign. Number 5, Final Fantasy VII $216 million. You may ask, how in 1997 could such money be spent on the game? Without panic, then it cost much less, but if you take into account inflation and changes in the dollar exchange rate, today the development would cost exactly $216 million. and only $45 million was spent on the development of the project. The creators spent everything else on advertising. Final Fantasy VII became the most expensive game in the series and, perhaps, because of this, it was remembered by gamers the most. The project was made better than the other parts in all aspects. This is a great example of how a lot of money helped make a really worthwhile game, and it was for Part 7 that we decided to release a remake, and not for any other. Number 4, Grand Theft Auto V, $265 million. A game that, in general, needs no introduction. The last at the moment and the 15th game in the GTA series. It took approximately $135 million to develop, and the total project budget, including marketing and other expenses, was about $265 million at the time of release. This is not only a record for the gaming industry, it is more than the budget of many Hollywood blockbusters. For example, the budget for Avatar was $237 million. But sales of the game justified all investments. As with the previous part, the GTA V waiting rating was very high. In the first day alone, more than 11 million copies of the game were sold for a total of about $800 million. In total, the game earned more than $1 billion. Number 3, Call of Duty: Modern Warfare 2, $276 million. A first-person shooter game. One of the most famous games in the Call of Duty series, largely due to the very controversial and noisy mission Not a Word in Russian, in which the player had to destroy civilians at the Moscow airport, very similar to Sheremetyevo. The development of the game was spent not so much by modern standards, $50 million. The main budget was spent on marketing and sales support. And for good reason. The game set several world records for both the speed of sales and total profit, earning a total of more than $1 billion. Number 2, Cyberpunk 2077, $315 million. Cyberpunk 2077 is an action-adventure role-playing game set in the metropolis of Night City, where power, luxury, and body modifications are valued above all else. You play as a mercenary in search of a device that allows you to gain immortality. You can change your character's cyber implants, skills, and play style as you explore an open world where your actions affect the course of the story and everything around you. Polish analysts from the company DM Bots estimated the budget of Cyberpunk 2077. According to their calculations, the creation of the game took $315 million. This amount includes money spent on both development and promotion of the game. According to analysts, the budget of Cyberpunk 2077 exceeds the budget of Grand Theft Auto V, and is almost the largest in the history of the gaming industry. Number 1, Destiny, $501 million. Initially, Destiny positioned itself as a new experience in the genre of multiplayer third-person shooters. The developers promised a lot of things and assured that they would be able to implement everything planned. Bungie kept its word and, to implement all the ideas, spent only $140 million in the creation of the project. Since Destiny was a completely new project, not a continuation of the famous franchise, and it has already spent a lot of money, Activision decides to thoroughly engage in an advertising campaign. In general, about $360 million was spent on the promotion of Destiny, and thank God that the project still liked the public and paid off. Otherwise, it could be one of the biggest failures in the entire gaming industry. Have you played one of these games? Is it worth the money? Be sure to write in the comments, it will be interesting for me to read. Just do not forget to like and subscribe, there is still a lot of interesting things ahead. See you in the next video.